I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
Doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
Steven Spielberg, a name that needs no introduction. Across generations and genres, Spielberg's storytelling has captivated audiences around the world. From E.T. to Jurassic Park, from Saving Private Ryan to Schindler's List, his ability to create emotional, cinematic magic remains unmatched. When Spielberg decides to direct a project, it instantly becomes an event. When he casts a newcomer in a leading role, it's more than a career boost, it's a coronation. That's exactly what happened when he selected Rachel Zegler for West Side Story. She was young, fresh, and incredibly talented, plucked from relative obscurity through a nationwide casting call. Rachel was supposed to be Spielberg's next golden find, the face of a new generation of movie stars. Her voice, her energy, her charisma, at least on the surface, seemed to promise greatness. The industry buzzed with excitement. Magazine profiles declared her Hollywood's next big thing. Fans flooded social media with anticipation. Critics and insiders alike believed Spielberg's instincts were, as always, impeccable. Giving a fresh face a chance in a legendary remake seemed like the perfect recipe for a Hollywood fairy tale. Rachel Zegler was set to become a household name overnight, but behind the carefully staged photographs and enthusiastic press releases, something very different was happening. Insiders from the production began whispering that Spielberg's faith in Zegler was being sorely tested. While Spielberg had a clear, heartfelt vision for West Side Story, a vision rooted in the emotional authenticity of the original, Rachel reportedly had very different ideas. Sources claim that she repeatedly pushed to modernize the character of Maria. She wanted to inject a level of independence and political messaging that clashed with the timeless innocence Spielberg sought to preserve. While it's not unusual for actors to bring suggestions to a role, the level of resistance Zegler allegedly displayed shocked even seasoned crew members. It wasn't collaboration, it was confrontation. For Spielberg, a director known for fostering creativity and collaboration, this was a serious problem. He had worked with some of the greatest actors in history, many with strong personalities, yet had always maintained a steady, respectful environment. But on West Side Story, the atmosphere reportedly grew strained. What should have been a joyful celebration of a beloved story turned into a battlefield of clashing egos. Crew members described the environment as tense, emotionally draining, and frustrating beyond anything they had expected. Spielberg, himself, known for his calm demeanor even under pressure, was said to have shown rare flashes of visible irritation during rehearsals. In quiet conversations away from the set, he allegedly confided to trusted colleagues that working with Rachel Zegler was among the most difficult professional experiences of his storied career. And yet, at that point, the public knew none of it. To the outside world, Rachel Zegler was still the shining new star, the Spielberg protege about to dazzle the world. Nobody outside the tight inner circles of Hollywood had any idea that the relationship between the director and his leading lady had already begun to deteriorate. The troubles didn't end with creative differences. Another controversy was brewing quietly but dangerously behind closed doors. Questions began circulating about Zegler's heritage. As Hollywood became more sensitive about authentic representation, studios took extra care in casting choices, especially in roles tied to specific cultural identities. Rachel Zegler had presented herself as Latina, and that identity was part of the appeal in casting her as Maria. But insiders suggest that some studio executives had private doubts about the accuracy of those claims. There were allegedly tense meetings, whispered conversations, and behind-the-scenes requests for Zegler to provide more definitive proof of her background. Rather than addressing these concerns professionally and diplomatically, Zegler reportedly chose to escalate the situation publicly. She accused studio insiders of questioning her identity, turning what could have been a quiet clarification into a loud, messy public relations nightmare. Instead of maintaining an image of grace under pressure, she portrayed herself as a victim, further fueling backstage tensions. While the public remained blissfully unaware of these mounting problems, the people inside the industry were watching closely. Spielberg himself, insiders claim, began to distance himself emotionally from the project as it progressed. Though he remained outwardly supportive during the film's promotional campaign, privately, it seemed his patience had reached its limit. When West Side Story finally debuted, it performed respectably, but not spectacularly. Critics praised Spielberg's direction, but were more muted about Zegler's performance. The film's success was overshadowed by growing chatter about Rachel's behavior both on and off set. What should have been the beginning of a glittering career instead became the start of a very public unraveling. But if the problems during West Side Story were significant, they were nothing compared to the disaster that was about to unfold with Snow White. When Disney announced that Rachel Zegler would be the new Snow White, the initial reaction was mixed, but hopeful. For Disney, casting Zegler was a calculated move. They believed her youthful energy and vocal talent could breathe new life into one of their most iconic characters. Internally, there was a strong push to modernize the brand, making their princesses more empowering and less dependent on male saviors. On paper, Zegler seemed to fit that mission perfectly. But almost immediately, cracks began to show. Instead of embracing the timeless story of Snow White, Zegler went on a press tour that baffled and alienated fans. In interviews, she repeatedly referred to the original 1937 classic as weird and creepy. She mocked the idea of a princess needing to be saved by a prince. She dismissed the importance of romance in fairy tales altogether, laughing at the very foundation upon which Disney built its empire. Rather than celebrating the chance to honor a beloved legacy, Zegler appeared disdainful of the material she had been hired to champion. For millions of lifelong Disney fans, it felt like a slap in the face. The backlash was immediate and intense. Across social media platforms, especially YouTube and TikTok, fans voiced their outrage. Memes mocking Zegler's interviews flooded the internet. Longtime Disney enthusiasts criticized the studio for abandoning the spirit of the original and for allowing its lead actress to openly trash a film that meant so much to so many. Disney executives quickly realized they had a serious problem on their hands. In private meetings, there was reportedly panic over how to salvage the situation. Marketing strategies were hastily rewritten. Future interviews were heavily scripted or canceled outright. Attempts were made to minimize Zegler's presence in promotional materials, shifting focus onto other cast members and the broader magical world of the film. But the damage had already been done. Rather than generating excitement, every new promotional clip, every quote from Zegler seemed to deepen the rift between the film and its intended audience. Instead of uniting fans across generations, Snow White became a cultural flashpoint, a symbol of what critics saw as Disney's increasingly tone-deaf attempts to modernize classic stories. As the premiere date approached, industry insiders predicted disaster. Tracking numbers were abysmal. Online sentiment was overwhelmingly negative. Even some Disney loyalists admitted they would skip the film out of protest. For a company that prided itself on building emotional connections with audiences, this was an unprecedented and alarming development. Then came opening weekend, and the catastrophe was confirmed. Despite the massive production budget, the star power behind the scenes, and Disney's global marketing machine, Snow White flopped spectacularly at the box office. It barely clawed its way to $194 million worldwide. An absolute disaster, given its estimated $240 to $270 million production cost. When factoring in marketing and promotional expenses, analysts estimated the film needed at least $500 million just to break even. Instead, it lost tens of millions. And worse, it lost the trust of the audience. Disney executives, according to several reports, were stunned. Some insiders claimed that internal reviews of the project pointed squarely at Rachel Zegler's disastrous press tour as a major cause of the failure. Marketing teams were reportedly furious that months of careful planning had been undone by a few careless interviews. At the same time, broader conversations about Zegler's attitude began to dominate the entertainment press. Behind the scenes, there were stories of tension between Zegler and her co-stars, including awkward encounters. On set, and rumors of political debates that turned personal and divisive. Crew members allegedly dreaded working on scenes involving Zegler, finding the environment stressful and charged with unnecessary drama. Instead of fostering a magical, collaborative atmosphere, the production of Snow White had become a toxic, high-stakes disaster. Meanwhile, Spielberg, watching from a distance, was said to have felt a grim sense of validation. The young actress he had once championed, despite early warning signs, had confirmed every concern he once quietly voiced during West Side Story. While he maintained his public professionalism, never openly criticizing Zegler, the industry knew. Spielberg's silence spoke volumes. For young actors in Hollywood, being blacklisted by a director like Spielberg isn't just damaging, it's career-ending. It signals to producers, casting directors, and studio heads that you are not worth the risk. Spielberg's reputation for professionalism and patience means that when he finally walks away from someone, it's never taken lightly, and walk away he did. Rachel Zegler found herself increasingly isolated. The very studios that once fought over her began to back away. Offers that had once come flooding in reportedly dried up. Her team worked overtime to reshape her image, but in a town built on relationships, reputations are everything. And hers was shattered. But even amid the professional disaster, Zegler made little effort to course correct. Instead of apologizing or addressing concerns, she doubled down. More interviews followed in which she appeared dismissive, smug, and disconnected from the reality of her situation. Rather than displaying humility and gratitude, she projected arrogance, and the audience noticed. Fans who once rooted for her success now celebrated her failure. YouTube channels that had once posted excited predictions about her career pivoted to post-mortem analyses of where it all went wrong. Articles, once praising her as the future of Hollywood, now chronicled her downfall in excruciating detail. Snow. White memes became a phenomenon in themselves. TikTok videos mocking Zegler's interviews racked up millions of views. Entire Reddit threads were devoted to tracking the collapse of her career. Even casual moviegoers, people who normally ignored Hollywood gossip, became aware of her story. Rachel Zegler had become a symbol, not just of personal failure, but of a broader frustration many audiences felt toward modern Hollywood, a perception that beloved stories were being hijacked, disrespected, and rewritten by people who didn't love them. And Zegler, fairly or not, became the poster child for that resentment. Disney, for its part, quickly moved on. New projects were greenlit with different stars. Future live-action remakes quietly shifted in tone, with internal memos suggesting a return to respectful modernization rather than aggressive reimagining. Privately, executives admitted that the Snow White debacle had been a wake-up call, but for Zegler, the path forward remained unclear. The fallout from Rachel Zegler's collapse extended far beyond her personal career. It became emblematic of a broader cultural tension between Hollywood studios and their audiences. Over the past decade, major entertainment companies had pushed to modernize beloved stories, infusing them with contemporary social and political messages. While the intentions may have been noble, the execution often left audiences feeling alienated, as if the stories they loved were being rewritten not out of passion, but out of obligation. In Zegler's case, the perception was even worse. Her openly dismissive attitude toward the source material was interpreted by many as evidence that she didn't respect or even like the original Snow White. A devastating accusation for someone tasked with bringing such a cherished character to life. It wasn't just about politics, it was about authenticity. Audiences wanted to believe that the people recreating these classic tales loved them as much as they did. Zegler's interview shattered that illusion. The broader industry took notice. Quiet conversations in studio boardrooms turned into serious debates about the future of live-action remakes and franchise reboots. Executives realized that fans would no longer blindly accept updated versions of classics if they sensed that the new stewards held contempt for the originals. Nostalgia wasn't just a marketing tool, it was a sacred trust. Rachel Zegler, once seen as the future of Disney's live-action universe, became a cautionary tale practically overnight. Meanwhile, Spielberg's quiet but decisive break from Zegler spoke volumes within the industry. In an environment where personal connections often make or break careers, losing the support of one of Hollywood's most powerful figures was catastrophic. While Spielberg never publicly criticized her, insiders say his decision not to work. With her again effectively blacklisted Zegler from major prestige projects, producers and directors began to view her as a liability. Studios grew wary of associating their projects with the negative publicity that seemed to follow her. Offers that once seemed inevitable evaporated. Auditions that should have been a formality turned into closed doors. Despite her undeniable talent, the risk simply outweighed the reward. Even Zegler's own team reportedly struggled to manage the damage. PR campaigns were launched to rehabilitate her image, but they rang hollow. Public apologies were either too vague or too late. every attempt to shift the narrative only reminded people of the original offense. The reality was clear. Zegler had not simply suffered a bad press cycle, she had committed the cardinal sin of Hollywood. She had alienated the audience, and once the audience turns on you, the studios quickly follow. Snow White's failure forced Disney to re-examine its entire live-action strategy. Projects already in development were quietly retooled. Scripts were rewritten to focus more on emotional authenticity and less on overt messaging. Marketing departments began to emphasize nostalgia and reverence for the originals rather than bold reinvention. The financial loss was painful, but the damage to Disney's brand was arguably even worse. Once seen as the undisputed king of family entertainment, Disney now found itself battling accusations of disrespecting its own legacy. Rachel Zegler's disastrous press tour became a textbook example of how not to handle a beloved property. Behind closed doors, executives conducted exhaustive postmortems on what had gone wrong. Among the conclusions was a simple but powerful truth. Audiences don't mind modernization, but they demand respect. They can accept updated characters, new perspectives, and even significant changes to the narrative, but they will not tolerate open contempt for the stories they hold dear. Rachel Zegler's downfall became a case study in film schools and entertainment industry seminars. Analysts dissected her interviews. Social media experts tracked the viral spread of memes mocking her. Marketing strategists cited Snow White as a warning of what happens when an actor's public persona becomes toxic to the brand they represent. Yet even as her career crumbled, Zegler herself seemed unaware of the full magnitude of the damage. Rather than stepping back, reflecting, and rebuilding her relationship with fans, she continued to project an image of indifference, even superiority. In doing so, she only deepened the resentment, the very qualities that had once made Rachel Zegler appealing. Her confidence, her outspokenness, her youthful energy had become liabilities. Hollywood loves ambition, but it demands humility. Confidence must be tempered by gratitude, and youthful energy must be channeled with respect for the institutions and audiences that make success possible. Rachel Zegler failed not because she was outspoken or political, but because she seemed to forget that at the heart of entertainment is a bond between storyteller and audience, a bond based on shared love, trust, and respect. Once broken, that bond is nearly impossible to mend. As the months passed, the industry moved on. New faces emerged. New stars captured the public's imagination. The news cycle churned forward, but the lessons of Rachel Zegler's downfall lingered, influencing decisions behind the scenes at every major studio. Spielberg, for his part, remained focused on his next projects, continuing to shape Hollywood with the quiet authority that only a master storyteller can wield. Though he never spoke publicly about his experience with Zegler, his actions sent a clear message to anyone paying attention. No one, no matter how talented, is above the basic rules of professionalism, gratitude, and respect. In an industry where opportunities are rare and second chances even rarer, Rachel Zegler's story stands as a stark reminder. Talent may open doors, but attitude will slam them shut.